How to write an effective letter of recommendation, a simple step-by-step approach. This video will take you through a step-by-step process you can use to produce a professional-looking and highly effective letter of recommendation. We'll cover how to structure a letter using a template that has proven to be flexible and powerful, how to personalize your letter to the candidate you're writing about, and how to make your letter convincing so that the person who's going to read it will respect your opinion and see your candidate in a favorable light. As an example, I'll be walking us through the writing process for a job applicant recommendation, probably one of the most common. But if you need a different type of letter, fear not. The outline and the principles we'll cover can be readily applied to any type of letter at all with just a little tweaking. Plus, I'll give you some pointers on how to do that along the way. So, if you're ready, let's get started. To walk us through our letter, I decided to use a software service called lettermachine.com, kind of guide us through our outline here. That'll keep you from having to wait for me to do a whole lot of typing here. You can see the service has a whole bunch of different types. I'll be walking us through job candidate type, which I already have preloaded. You can see the first thing here is just to enter our candidate information. I've gone ahead and done that. Notice I've indicated that my candidate is a male. If you're piecing together your letter, particularly if you're using pieces of other letters, be careful about gender to make sure that all the pronouns are his or her, depending on who your candidate is. It's asking if I want to refer to my candidate either as Chris or Mr. Jackson. I've decided Mr. Jackson. In writing your letter, you should be consistent either way, and I'm going to go and be a little more formal. All right, going to the next screen here. I've entered my date. I want a personal and confidential notice at the top of my letter. I want a line telling my candidate or the recipient what this is regarding. All just sort of formatting the top of my letter here. This letter I'm putting in by Barbara Ritchie. You can see the address that I've entered. I've indicated that this is going to be written on letterhead, so it'll create some space at the top for the letterhead. You can put a specific recipient here. I'm just going to say dear sir or madam. In most cases, that's probably what you will have. The first section of the letter is an introduction, basically stating, hello, this is a letter of recommendation. So you can see Letter Machine's giving me a number of options here. I can type in my own, but I kind of like this one right here. I am writing this letter at the request of my candidate who has recently applied for a position in your firm. I'm going to go ahead and skip the confidentiality notice. In some instances, it's important to say that this is sent on the basis of confidentiality. I'm just going to go ahead and skip that. The next section describes past positions in a job. That's important. You need to indicate how you know the candidate. So I'm going to say the candidate has worked for me. And you can see that's the beginning of a sentence. The second section of the sentence, I can say for 2 years. If it's longer than that, you can type in the number of years. I've done that for 6 years. So I've known this candidate for 6 years. And then what you want to describe is the initial position the candidate held and the final position the candidate held. So I put he or she has started with us in a particular year as, and then the original job title. And now has since advanced to postal distribution supervisor in this particular case. And then you say in that capacity, he or she is responsible for, and describe what it is they do in their job. You can skip any of these sections, but I think these are pretty important, so I'll go ahead and use those. Any additional duties, I went ahead and skipped that. And comments on progress. Okay, so you've gone from point A to point B. What does that mean? So I've written here, I have been very pleased to see his or her deserved advancement. So I think that's a pretty good way of saying that. I'm going to go on to the next section here. All right, if their person has experienced some turnover, you need to justify that. Nobody wants to hire somebody that someone else has fired with cause. So I'm going to put unfortunately, and you just look for your reason here. Whatever the reason is, I've decided to select this one. The candidate decided to leave the organization. And then the second part of the sentence indicates the time period for that. So I'm just going to say recently. You can put in a date, you can put in kind of a time frame. I'm just going to say recently. And then why. So I put to seek better opportunities elsewhere. And then you want to say explicitly, this is not a reflection on this candidate. If it is a reflection, you can skip that. I don't think I want to do that. This situation does not in any way reflect adversely on him or her, and my reaction to his leaving. So I'm going to say, I am disappointed to see him go. And you can rearrange that in a number of different ways. And I certainly wish him the greatest success. Once again, you can kind of choose some options here. All right, in his or her new undertaking. To finish that sentence off. Okay, this is kind of the body of your letter and probably the most important part. It starts off with an introduction to the details section of your letter. And what I'm going to say here is the candidate possesses several traits that should be of interest to a prospective employer. And I have a list of potential traits that you can choose from here. It's important to choose traits that have two characteristics. One, this specific employer that you have in mind is really going to want that trait for some reason. And two, your candidate has it and can demonstrate it. So for my candidate, I've selected for my first trait energy, and you can see I've selected here. My second trait's initiative. My third trait down here I've chosen reliability, and you can have up to 4 traits. 3 or 4 is really kind of pushing. I'm going to do 3. So I'm going to go ahead now to the first trait. Since I'm going to have a list of traits, I want to say first of all, and of course the second one I'll say second, and the third I'll say finally, right? So I'm saying the candidate is naturally vibrant and energetic. Remember, I'm talking here about the candidate's energy. So that's a way of describing his energy. And then you sort of extend the trait a little bit. He or she is always on the move is the one that I selected here. And now you want to give a specific example in which this candidate demonstrated this trait. Instead of just making this an airy-fairy recommendation, this gives it some meat. So what I put is he or she consistently, and this is the part that you really kind of have to write yourself. It's going to be highly specific to your candidate. And what I put is he's the first to arrive in the office and never leaves before all the mail's been handled, even last-minute packs that must be taken by courier across town. So obviously that would be something that you have to write yourself for your candidate. You can skip it if you want, but I think it's really the part of the letter that really makes it. Okay, so finally you want to describe what's the business result of this trait. Why should an employer care that your candidate has this trait? So I put this energy, the beginning of the sentence, will enable him to, and then finally maintain a hectic work pace. And if this person is applying for some position where there is a hectic workplace, that's perhaps a very important thing. Next, I'm going to work on initiative, basically the same song and dance. I'm going to go second, of course, because this is my second trait, and I went ahead and selected the intro, and I've given a specific example, and I've talked about why that should be important. And then my third trait, I say finally, I believe, yeah, finally, and then do the same thing, same basic exercise here. I choose reliability. I talk about a specific example where the person demonstrated reliability, and then why the employer should care. And I skip the fourth, so I'm going to go ahead and pass through this. And then finally, an overall evaluation. I'm just going to say, overall, I can recommend the candidate to you without reservation. For any position you might deem appropriate, you can use the system to get a little more specific, actually mention a specific position if that's appropriate. And then a prediction here, you will find him to be a valuable asset, just some sort of prediction of you think that the person's going to function well. And finally, feel free to contact me using the information provided below. Once again, you can skip that if you don't want to see that, and then decide how you want to sign. I usually go with sincerely, and that's it. The letter machine will put all this together and list the letter here. I'll go ahead and show you kind of what that looks like. Here's the full letter, and I can just copy and paste this into a word processor and go ahead and print it. So that's pretty much how the process works. Once again, this video was put together using a software service called Letter Machine. You can find out more about the service at www.letter-machine.com/rec. If you're struggling with a particularly important letter, or you write letters often or regularly, then I suggest you check it out. I hope you've enjoyed this video and have found it informative.